Good morning, everyone. Today is January 2021. God will make a way through the wilderness. God makes a way through the wilderness. Sometimes we don't know how we're going to get through the wilderness, but God makes a way through the wilderness. And so this morning, let us look at some instances in the Bible where God made a way in the wilderness. And let us apply it to us. I must say that right now, the way I feel is that I feel like that I'm in a desert howling wilderness. Remember Hagar house, and she had Ishmael, and the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Shur, Genesis 16:7. Genesis 21:14, Abraham rose up early in the morning and took the bread and bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Genesis 21:20, and God was with the lad, and he grew up and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer. There were many times when the elders when Moses was petitioning Pharaoh to let his people go, he wanted Pharaoh to let him go 3 days' journey into the wilderness. They would sacrifice unto the Lord. Have you ever thought about that? There's a good place to go and worship the Lord in the wilderness, not in a high density area, not in LA or Detroit or Atlanta or Washington, D.C., but in the wilderness. Exodus 4:27, the Lord said to Abram, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. And he went and he met him in the mount of God and kissed him. Exodus 5:1, the Lord God of Israel, let my people go that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. There's no better place to hold a feast unto the Lord than in the wilderness. We don't have to be in a fancy church, a great big old brick and mortar building. We can go out in the cabin at the end of the world. That's kind of where I'm at. And we can be closer to the Lord in the wilderness than we can in a $2 million building. Finally, how many times did Pharaoh tell Moses, well, I'll let you go that you may sacrifice the Lord your God in the wilderness? Well, we know that God led the people of Israel through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea. The children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt, 13:18. Why do you think so many people are taking refuge and leaving big cities like New York and Atlanta and LA and San Francisco and Detroit. They're being called out. Come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord. Touch not the unclean thing. And God led the people out through the wilderness. You know, Exodus 13:18, God led the people about through the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up, harnessed out of the land of Egypt. It's time we become harnessed out of the land of Egypt, don't you think? People of Israel kept thinking they were going to die in the wilderness. They prospered in the wilderness. God gave them manna to eat, gave them quail from heaven. And he led them into the land of Canaan, flowing with milk. Well, are you encamped in the wilderness this morning? I know I am. I'm looking for the day when I'm out of the wilderness and enter into the new Jerusalem coming down out of God, out of heaven. But we can't get to the new Jerusalem till we go through the wilderness. Numbers 14:33. Many of our carcasses shall fall in the wilderness. I, the Lord, have said, I will surely do it until this evil congregation that are gathered together against me in the wilderness, they shall be consumed and they shall die. You know, many people who have fled from the presence of God have died in the wilderness. But those who come through the wilderness, those who come across on the other side, so to speak, are most blessed indeed. They've been blessed with all spiritual blessings in heavenly places. Well, I would encourage you to go to the best King James Version program I've found for doing searches and word studies and everything else is the King James Bible.org, kingjamesbibleonline.org. And go to the search the words and put in wilderness. You'll get 294 instances or 10 pages of instances that are in the Bible. You know, we are in a waste howling wilderness this morning as we speak. Whether you live in America, whether you live in the United Kingdom or Australia or Canada, I hear from you all. I hear from you all, and I hear what's happening in your countries. Remember, John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. Remember when Jesus was being tempted of the devil? The Spirit led him into the wilderness. Many times the multitude was in the wilderness. In fact, that's when Christ fed 5,000 people in the wilderness. Well, there are advantages to getting away and being alone with God, being out of the city, being in a quiet solitude place. You know, Acts 7:38 refers to the church in the wilderness. The church in the wilderness. I'm one of those that are of the church in the wilderness, and I've enjoyed the communion and fellowship of my family in our little house church in the wilderness in Pineville, Missouri. So this morning, let us see the advantages of coming out from the urban areas and be separate, saith the Lord. Touch not the unclean thing and flee to the wilderness. That's my exhortation to you this morning. God bless.